Good day. This is the Corrupt True Crime Podcast, and I'm Charlie Cruz. Today's episode is about one of the most audacious robberies ever pulled off, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist, where thieves disguised as police officers walked away with $500 million in masterpieces that have never been seen again. Two men in Boston police uniforms ring the doorbell of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum at 1:30 in the morning. The night guard sees them on the security monitor, crisp uniforms, official demeanor, claiming they're responding to a disturbance call. And here's where everything hinges on one decision. Does he follow protocol and call the police department to verify? Or does he simply buzz them in? He buzzes them in. The moment that door clicks open, these two men have just set in motion the largest art theft in human history. 81 minutes later, they'll walk out with 13 irreplaceable masterpieces worth $500 million. And here's the truly baffling part. More than 3 decades later, not a single painting has been recovered. Not one. It's as if they simply vanished into thin air. Now, to understand how audacious this heist really was, you've got to understand what they were hitting. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum sits in Boston's Fenway neighborhood, this intimate palazzo-style building packed with some of the most valuable art on the planet. We're talking Rembrandt, Vermeer, Degas, Manet, the sort of collection that would make the Louvre jealous. But here's the beautiful irony. The very thing that made this collection so extraordinary also made it vulnerable. Isabella Stewart Gardner's will stipulated that nothing in the museum could ever be moved, sold, or altered. If anyone violated that provision, the entire collection had to be sold off and the proceeds given to Harvard, which meant the museum couldn't modernize security without disturbing the original appearance, couldn't move high-value pieces to vaults at night, couldn't install obvious cameras or barriers. They were essentially trapped with security protocols from the 1920s. And somebody knew this. Somebody had done their homework. The date selection alone shows meticulous planning. St. Patrick's Day weekend in Boston, when the police department is absolutely overwhelmed dealing with downtown celebrations. The timing, 1:30 in the morning, hits that sweet spot when the guards have been on duty long enough to be drowsy, but shift change isn't imminent. 2 guards total for a building housing hundreds of millions in art. No armed security, no backup. Just 2 young guys, relatively inexperienced, and one very exploitable weakness in the system. The thieves understood something fundamental about human psychology. We're conditioned to comply with authority. Those police uniforms weren't just costumes. They were psychological weapons. When Rick Abath, the 23-year-old night watchman, saw those uniforms on his monitor, every instinct told him to cooperate. These were Boston's finest, except they weren't. The moment he opened that door, they had him. "There's a warrant out for one of you," the lead thief announces. Standard procedure would be to call it in, verify through dispatch. But Abath doesn't. He steps away from the security desk, away from the only panic button that connects directly to Boston police, and that's when they reveal the ruse. "This is a robbery. Don't give us any problems and you won't get hurt." The second guard gets called down from his patrol route. Both men are subdued without violence, bound with duct tape, handcuffed to pipes in the basement, heads wrapped, professional, efficient, almost courteous. And now these 2 thieves have 81 minutes of uninterrupted access to one of the world's greatest private art collections. 81 minutes. Most smash and grabs take 5. These gentlemen took their time. Here's where it gets properly fascinating and utterly bizarre. They go straight to the Dutch room on the 2nd floor and start cutting paintings from their frames. 3 Rembrandts come off the walls, including The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, the master's only seascape. Then they take Vermeer's The Concert. Now, you've got to understand something about Vermeer. The man painted fewer than 40 works in his entire lifetime. Only 34 are known to exist. Each one is essentially priceless. Taking that Vermeer guaranteed this heist would become an international priority. Then they grab 5 Degas drawings, a Manet from the Blue Room, and here's where it gets completely baffling. They take a bronze eagle finial off a flagpole and an ancient Chinese beaker worth comparative pennies. The selection process makes absolutely no sense. They're in a room with multiple Rembrandts of equal value, and they leave several behind. There's a Titian down the hall worth over $100 million. They ignore it completely. Motion detectors show they spent significant time in one gallery and took nothing. Either they were looking for something specific they couldn't find, or they were working from a shopping list provided by someone who didn't actually know art. More after our break.
My name is Tom Sachs. I'm an artist in New York City. For nearly 2 decades, I have been collaborating with Nike.
Nike running is for runners. Nike basketball is for basketball. Nike craft is for everyone else.
The Chinese beaker and the eagle ornament. Taking those suggests either panic or a fundamental lack of sophistication. Professional art thieves don't waste time and risk on decorative objects worth thousands when they're surrounded by paintings worth hundreds of millions. But give them credit for the execution itself. Clean getaway, no forensic evidence, no witnesses seeing them load the paintings or identifying their vehicle. They damaged some works, cutting them from frames. The storm on the Sea of Galilee suffered particularly, but they got away with it. All of it. The guards remained bound in the basement until the day shift arrived at 8:15 that morning, found the door ajar, and discovered what had happened. By then, 13 irreplaceable masterpieces were already hidden somewhere in the Boston underworld. The FBI's art crime team descended immediately, and what they found was both impressive and puzzling. No fingerprints, no DNA, no fiber evidence that led anywhere. The thieves had been careful, or extraordinarily lucky. The security footage from the entrance showed 2 men in police uniforms, but the resolution was useless for identification. The galleries themselves had no cameras. Isabella Gardner's will strikes again. The investigation pivoted to the human element. Who had the knowledge? Who had the connections? Who could fence works this famous? And this is where organized crime enters the picture. Because here's the thing about stealing art this valuable. You can't exactly pop it on eBay. These paintings are too famous to sell legally, too recognizable to display. They're either commissioned theft, stolen for a specific private collector who'll never show them to anyone, or they're collateral, bargaining chips in the criminal underworld. The FBI started looking at Boston's organized crime networks, and names started surfacing. Career criminals with art theft connections, associates of Miles Connor Jr., the legendary Boston art thief who'd robbed museums before but happened to be in prison the night of the Gardner heist. Perfect alibi. But the theory emerged. Maybe he planned it from behind bars. Maybe others executed his vision. George Reisfelder and Leonard DiMuzio became prime suspects. Both career criminals, both with connections to Connor, both physically matching the guards' descriptions. The FBI built a circumstantial case, but here's where it gets properly frustrating. Reisfelder died of a substance overdose 16 months after the heist. DiMuzio died years later. Both died before charges could be filed, taking whatever they knew to their graves. Then there's Robert Donati, another strong suspect, murdered mob-style 18 months after the heist. Associates believed he'd participated. Theory, he was killed because the heist went sideways, because they couldn't fence the paintings, because he'd become a liability. Carmelo Molino, who ran a Dorchester auto body shop that was basically a mob clubhouse, tried to broker the painting's return in the late 90s, presumably to claim the reward. The FBI wired his shop, recorded conversations about the art, but nothing concrete enough for charges. He died as well. Robert Gentile, a Connecticut mob associate, got squeezed hard by the FBI over decades. They were convinced he knew where the paintings were hidden, searched his property multiple times, found a newspaper clipping about the Gardner heist in his belongings. He maintained innocence until dying at 85, taking potential secrets with him. The FBI made a remarkable announcement about a decade ago. They know who did it. They've identified the thieves, but they lack sufficient evidence for prosecution, and more critically, they still don't know where the paintings are. That's the truly maddening aspect. You can solve who without solving where. The most likely scenario, the one that makes hardened investigators genuinely sad, is that some of those paintings were damaged beyond repair during the theft or afterward, that they were hidden with people who didn't realize what they had, that when those people died, the knowledge died with them. The museum still offers a $10 million reward for information leading to the safe return of all 13 pieces in good condition. It's the largest private reward ever offered, and in the galleries where those paintings once hung, empty frames remain on the walls. Isabella Gardner's will stipulates nothing can be moved, remember? So those frames hang there, haunting reminders of what was lost. Visitors stand before them, staring at absence, imagining what once filled that space. Here's what makes this case so fascinating beyond the obvious. It represents nearly perfect execution of an impossible crime followed by complete failure to capitalize on it. More after our break.
Building a new product? Temez Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at temez.ai.
They pulled off the heist brilliantly. The planning, the timing, the psychological manipulation, the clean escape. But then what? 30 plus years later, those paintings haven't surfaced anywhere. No ransom was successfully negotiated. No pieces were recovered. If the goal was money, they've gained nothing. If the goal was private collection, someone sitting on Vermeers, they can never show anyone. That's not victory. That's expensive wallpaper in a very secret room. The human cost matters too. Those works belong to the world, to culture, to history. The concert is one of only 34 known Vermeers. Future generations will never see it because two men spent 81 minutes cutting canvas. The security guards who were on duty that night, particularly Rick Abath, have lived under suspicion and guilt for decades. Abath made a catastrophic mistake opening that door, but he was 23, working overnight security, and confronted with authority figures demanding entry. He's passed polygraphs, he's cooperated extensively, and he's had to live with that moment of judgment for his entire adult life. What the Gardner heist ultimately demonstrates is that cleverness without wisdom is just elaborate failure. Yes, they got in. Yes, they got away. But they didn't get away with anything meaningful. They can't sell the art. They can't display it. They're either dead or living in fear of exposure, having gained nothing. Meanwhile, the FBI's investigation remains open. The statute of limitations on the theft itself has expired in some jurisdictions, but receiving stolen property charges remain viable. That $10 million reward sits there, waiting. All it takes is one person deciding they'd rather have the money than the secret. One deathbed confession. One storage unit discovered during an estate sale. The empty frames still hang in the Gardner Museum, testament to audacity, greed, and irreplaceable loss. They're the most valuable empty frames in the world, marking spaces where genius once lived. And somewhere out there, maybe rolled in a tube, maybe hanging in a basement where no one can see them, maybe damaged beyond repair, maybe destroyed entirely, are works by Rembrandt and Vermeer that the world may never see again. That's not a heist. That's a tragedy dressed up in police uniforms, committed in 81 minutes, echoing across decades. Brilliant execution, catastrophic failure. The cleverest theft in history that gained the thieves absolutely nothing, except a place in the annals of crimes that fascinate us precisely because they should never have worked, but somehow did, right until the moment they didn't. The thing about brilliant schemes is that they always end with handcuffs and bars, because no matter how clever you think you are, the house always wins. Now, if you enjoyed our show, tap that follow button and 5 stars in our ratings. Catch you next time.
Grab news. Tamez.